All right. Hello, everybody. Can everybody hear me? Welcome, everybody, to my talk about Newcomb's paradox. Can everybody hear me correctly? Can someone write a message, maybe? All right. We'll just start with a talk about Newcomb's paradox, and if anybody has a question, they can just ask in the chat. So first of all, what is Newcomb's problem? Let me just share my screen real quick. So imagine you walk into a room and there's this experimenter, let's call him Omega, and he presents you with two boxes labeled A and B. And he shows you that in box A is $1,000, and you can see this, but box B is closed and you can't see what's in it. But he does tell you this about box B. He says, well, it either contains $1 million or it contains nothing at all. And then he says, like, you have to choose. You either get to take both boxes or you only take box B. So you either $2 by taking box A and box B, or you $1 by only taking box B. And of course, there's a catch to this problem, because otherwise it wouldn't be very interesting. Omega is a very good predictor of human behavior. He can predict what you do in a problem like this, and he can do so perfectly. And he says, well, if I predicted what you would do before you even walked into the room, and if I predicted that you would $2, then there's no money in box B. And if I predicted you would $1, only then did I put $1 million in there. So the outcome to this problem depends both on Omega's prediction of what you would do and on your action, of course. If Omega predicted you would $2, for example, then she didn't put $1 million in box B. Box B is empty. And so if you then $1, you take only box B, there's nothing in it, so you go home with $0. And if you $2, you take box A as well, so you get $1,000, right? And if he predicted that you would $1, then there's $1 million in box B. So if you $1, you get $1 million, and if you $2, you get the $1 million of box B and $1,000 of box A. Is this clear so far for everybody? Or are there questions? All right. The interesting thing about this problem, it's a problem within the field of decision theory. And there are multiple different theories within this field: causal decision theory, evidential decision theory, and they all have their own answer to this problem. So some theories $1 and some theories $2, and they all seem to have pretty good reasons. Even though only one answer can be correct. But let's start with causal decision theory. This is a theory that says like you should only look at a causal effect your action has. And you have an effect on which box you take, obviously, but you cannot have any causal effect on Omega's prediction because it happened in the past. You can only have causal influence on the future. So this theory says like, well, you can't affect what Omega does. So how should you make a decision if you look at it like that? Well, turns out that's pretty easy. What if Omega predicted that you would $1? Like, imagine that for a second. She predicted you would $1. Then he put $1 million in box B. So if you $1, then you get $1 million. If you $2, yeah, you get $1 million. And 1,000. So $2 in that case is better. $2 clearly wins if Omega predicted that you would $1. But it's also possible that Omega predicted you would $2 and then there isn't any money in box B. But then it turns out that $2 is also better because it gets you $1,000 instead of nothing. So it seems that whatever Omega predicted, $2 gives you 1,000 more than $1. So causal decision theory says you should $2 if you want to earn the most money. But the problem here is that Omega predicts your behavior. And if you $2, because of the reasons we just discussed, then Omega will know that you would $2 because of those reasons. And then she won't have put any money in box B. So you only make $1,000, even though it seems the $1 million is right there in the table. So that's the problem with causal decision theory. Then there's another decision theory. It's called evidential decision theory. And it says, well, what if like 1,000 people have played this particular game, and some of them $2 and some of them $1. And if Omega really is such a good predictor, then everybody who $2 would have earned $1,000, and everybody who $1 would have earned $1 million. So based purely on that correlation between $1 and earning $1 million, evidential decision theory says, well, you should just $1 because that's good evidence that Omega has put $1 million in box B. And so you will earn $1 million. And that's a much better outcome than causal decision theory had, because that theory only made you $1,000. But the fact that the outcome is great doesn't mean that your reasoning is correct. Reasoning based purely on correlations can go wrong. For example, in smoking lesion, that's another interesting problem. In this problem, you have to imagine like a hypothetical world where smoking is correlated with getting lung cancer, but it doesn't cause lung cancer. It just so happens that there is this genetic lesion that causes both lung cancer and causes you to enjoy smoking more than usual. So it causes more people to smoke, and it causes lung cancer. And so there is this correlation between lung cancer and smoking, but if you look within the group of people who have the lesion, then there's no correlation between smoking and lung cancer. If you look at the population of people who don't have a lesion, then there's also no correlation anymore. And this problem asks, like, if you enjoy smoking and given this information, should you smoke? To which the answer should be yes, because it doesn't have any influence on getting lung cancer. And if you enjoy it, you should just do it. However, evidential decision theory says you should not smoke because smoking is correlated with getting lung cancer. And evidential decision theory purely looks at correlations. Causal decision theory looks at the causal effects of your action, and therefore says you should smoke in this problem. So that's a problem for evidential decision theory. So that still leaves us with how to reason your way out of Newcomb's problem the correct way. And for that, let's start. I want to do a thought experiment. And this thought experiment is called calculator. So what if I type, imagine that I have a calculator and I type in 76 times 63. And I push the button and it gives me the answer, but I don't tell you the answer. And you then work it out for yourself and find that the answer is 4,788. And that means that you now know that my calculator also gave the answer 4,788. And in a way, my calculator predicted that you would answer this. And that's because you and the calculator are, well, you're calculating the same thing, right? You're both calculating the multiplication function over the two inputs 76 and 63. So you get the same answer. And that's not much of a surprise. The point is, in Newcomb's problem, you give an answer, like you say $1 or you say $2. So you could say that there you're also implementing a certain function in your brain that says that outputs $1 or $2. And since omega has predicted what you would do and apparently knows how you make a decision in this problem, she also implements that same function. And it also means that if your function outputs one box, or in normal words, if you say one box to this problem, then earlier on, when Omega was predicting what you would do, that same function also output one box. Just like with you in the calculator in the previous example. And Omega uses that to predict your action in this problem. So really, the theory around this idea is called functional decision theory, appropriately. So the idea here is that if you one box, that means that the function you're implementing for this problem outputs one box. And that means that Omega predicted that you would one box because, well, if a function outputs, like if you calculate the answer to 76 times 63 and it turns out to be 4,788, then that means the calculator would have gotten the same answer. And if the answer to the sum was 1,000, you would have calculated that. And then the calculator would have also gotten 1,000. So there's no way for you in the calculator to have a difference, to give a different answer to the same question. And the same thing is true in Newcomb's problem. If you one box, then Omega must have predicted that because he is implementing the same function as you do. So if you one box, he predicted that you would one box, and if you two box, then Omega predicted that you would two box. So really, there's only two outcomes to this game. Either you make 1,000, either you make $1,000 or you make $1 million. And $1 million is clearly better. So you should just one box. And that's the same answer as evidential decision theory gave, but with a completely different kind of reasoning. And yeah, so functional decision theory says you should one box and then you make $1 million. But also in smoking lesion, functional decision theory says you should smoke because it's a different type of problem. Like it may look similar, but it's different because the lesion isn't actually implementing your function or anything. The lesion isn't smart. It's just there, and it causes the smoking and it causes the lung cancer, but there isn't. It's just not the same problem as Newcomb's problem. And does anybody have any questions about this? Because now would definitely be the time to ask. Yeah, because this is mostly what I wanted to talk about, how to resolve Newcomb's problem. Um, yeah, so if nobody has any questions, I think we can finish this talk. And thank you all for listening.